from it, it definitely goes back through her family. Now, how deep within her family, I don't know. But what I do know is that she was ritualistically abused, horrific. I mean, beyond some of the things that I read that she described, or something that no human being should ever experience. And so what I saw in my mom, and where I think it grew,
I sense your weakness,
was I always saw her extremely conflicted with this. It was like it was part of her, but it was also a part that she hated. And so even her leaving, as much as it hurt, to my knowledge, it truly was all she knew how to do to protect me. And I even look back at it that, I mean, her trying to protect me from her parents, her trying to, protect, there was this duality of her where there was evil that was wanting to continue and do harm. There also was a side of her that truly saw her. I was the oldest child, and I know that there were previous children that did not make it, and I was the first that did. And so that was, there's, these practices, there's bloodline, the oldest grandson. There's just a lot of things that had some ties to me that I think really, I don't know for sure, because nobody's ever said, yeah, Christopher, by the way, yeah, I'm your great uncle, and yeah, we were planning on doing it. So that's where I have to go off the information I have.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, a cult means things that are hidden and are secretive. And if it's rooted in satanic principles and lying, you want to hide that because the perceptions people are going to have. So thinking somebody's living a normal life is actually one of the most powerful ways to continue these practices as opposed to just being out in the open about it. Now, you might be jumping ahead in your story, but you said you made a reference to your mom. Was that when you were a kid, when you were older? What do you mean by that?
So she was around till I was in my early teens. Again, experienced lots of things with her, but multiple self-attempts on her own life, was hospitalized, and eventually that's when she just said, I need to leave. She was still close to our family-ish, and I would see her regularly, but it still was very, whether I knew, and we just, again, these were things that to me I didn't put them together till later, but there would be times where I was supposed to go see her for the weekend, and it was almost like she knew something was coming, and it was like, you can't be here this weekend. And so that was just, again, routine, where it was like, okay, well, I guess mom's either not going to be around this weekend or mom's not going to be around this weekend. And so ultimately I lost contact with her, in my late teens.
Did you ever have friends come over who just saw stuff and you feel like, I've got to cover this up and hide it and it's kind of a family secret? Or did that not really come out as your kid growing up in any different ways?
When I was young, I don't know that it really came out in any ways. She was very good at hiding it. And again, there was almost just this, and I think a lot of it was just, oh, well, she's mentally ill, or she's tired, or things like that. And so even our family just had a practice of knowing, like, oh, well, mom's not doing the best. We can't have our plans this weekend, type of a thing. So that, as I got into my teenage years, she was just so conflicted and so torn because all of this started coming out for her, that she was in the hospital in and out so much that I think people in the community just went, we don't really know what's going on, but whatever it is, your mom's not doing well. And at the time, I still was just starting to discover what was happening. And so to me, I just thought I had a very sick mom.
Now, obviously, your mom made choices, and she's an agent, but also was, the way you described, we don't have to go into any detail about this, but just ritualistically abused. Do you view her as just being a victim of a lot of forces? Like, how do you make sense of that in your mind between being an agent who can choose, but just forces and family members clearly tormenting her in a way that she wanted to escape from at times? How do you make sense of that tension in your mind?
So
Leave it to me.
it's definitely changed as I've matured in my walk with Christ. I think when I was very young, because I would have some of these very happy memories with my mom, I really almost completely dismissed accountability for some of the really scary parts of her. And just kind of went, like any kid, you just want your mom to love you and you want her approval and whatever. And so I kind of just completely glossed over the scary side. I think as I discovered the scary side and really started processing my own grief and the effect of my childhood trauma on me, I became very frustrated and angry and kind of resentful of her. Not necessarily what she went through. I still had empathy for that. But I became very resentful of, but you continued it. Like, you affected me and our family and my life. And I think then as my walk matured and I really started to understand the power of evil, I think it's become more of I really feel bad for her. I hold her fully accountable for what she did because I see her agency in it, but I also saw someone who suffered horrifically, and my heart actually just breaks for her. I pray daily that God would show her the freedom that he offers to her and that she could break free from it, because I saw someone who was just tormented,
Jinzhou City,
truly
just up
living
ahead.
hell on earth. And that you can't look at that and go, what a terrible, regardless of what you've been, at least I can't look at that and just have a cold heart to it, because she truly experienced hell on earth, and that shapes a person.
Rover?
And so, like I said, I still hold her accountable, but I've forgiven her. I love her, and I pray that she can experience true freedom from the pain and the horrors that she lives.
What would you say
There
to someone?
you
I'm curious. That this is an apologetics
My
channel. I love telling people
dearest.
stories, but I know there's people
Seed of
watching,
fate.
including some Christians, who would probably find it hard to believe what you described about your mom.
Yeah.
Maybe it was,
Alrighty.
I mean, I don't
What
know
should we do
the medical
next?
term, but maybe someone would say it's schizophrenia or bipolar, or there's some other medical
Shall we go
condition
grab
why
a
her
bite?
personality,
Sure.
multiple personalities shifted. What convinces you that there's not just a physical, naturalistic explanation, but genuinely something
to return to the
supernatural
academy.
was going on?
The anomalies
So
of the
to
gorgeous
the
experience,
Christian and
the
non-Christian
resurgence of that
skeptics
tacit field,
who
and
want
the
a
many
naturalistic
wave-worn
explanation
phenomena
for it,
occurrences,
I
I
get
should
it.
report them in time.
I wanted one too. I mean, honestly, I was almost more relieved when I thought, oh, dissociative identity disorder. See, it's just a cognitive splitting of her brain, and that's it. And with enough therapy and the right meds, my mom's gonna be okay, and that's all it's gonna take. And I wanted that. That's
Then
the thing.
I'll
For
go
me,
submit
accepting
our
it was
report
probably
and
harder than
prepare the
anybody listening
documentation
to it.
needed
And that's,
for
I think,
Rover's
the part
audience
that,
with the magistrate
people think
while
like,
I'm
oh,
there.
yeah, I'm sure for you, you just jump to that because it
It
makes
may
it
take
easier
some
to
time,
explain your mom.
But there won't be too
Actually,
much
no, it
paperwork.
doesn't. Accepting where my mom
Then
came
I guess
from,
I'll take Rover over to the
accepting
Nexus Tower for registration
what
first.
I experienced
Then we'll just
to
hang
be
out for a while.
what it
Being
was,
new to Jinzhou
like
and
that's
all,
not
you
something
can't be
you
left
just
standing outside the
accept
city hall with
first.
nothing to do.
If anything, you're constantly making excuses for
Hospitality
why it's not.
is
It
our
can't
local
possibly
specialty,
be that.
you
It
know.
has to be all these other things. I mean, I remember
Then
reading the books,
I'll
going,
leave you in
"Oh,
Shazia's care,
she's a
Rover.
novelist.
Is that all
she's
right
a
with
creative.
you?
She's at this.
I'll give
This
you
must
a
just
call
be
once
pure
the paperwork is done.
made up stuff that
Leave
helps
it
her
to me.
explain the
I'll
voices
send
in
the
her
branch
head
of
and all the
resin
things that
medical
she's
science a notice.
doing. So I get it. I
We
get why
need to
people
conduct
do.
a thorough physical examination on you to
There
make
were
sure
things
you're
I
fine.
saw as a kid. I mean, she was not a big woman
Come
at
visit
all,
the academy
and I
after
saw
your
her
audience if you have no
throw
other plans.
things in the house that it would take multiple grown men
guys
to pick
done
up.
yet? What's
I
the
saw
hold
her
up?
change
Let's move. Then I'll
physically
have more time to show Rover around.
in ways
We've
and
got
do
loads
things
of
that
fun in
you
Jinzhou.
can't explain
We can
that.
go
Oh,
watch
well, she
lion
had a bad
dances,
day or her
hero
personality
plays,
split.
stand-up
And
shows,
people can tell
and
me,
maybe
oh,
the
you
martial
were a kid, you don't
championships.
remember. That's
Plus
fine.
tons of
I get
different
it.
treats to
It's
try
hard
out.
enough for me to
You
accept.
think it, we
I don't
have it.
necessarily expect somebody else to listen to it and go, oh, it must be true. But I think to anybody who watches and listens to it and has even had an iota of a brush with some of this stuff, they're going to go, I know exactly what he's talking about. I know exactly what he's talking about, and he isn't lying. And so I don't tell the story to try and convince people, you know, hey, I got a book about demons and you need to believe demons are real. Like, no, I'm just telling the story because there's people out there who have had glances with this and they think they're crazy for all the reasons I did. They think there's got to be another explanation. There has to be this. And I share my story to go, you're not nuts. You're not crazy. I know what it is. And it's terrifying.
I don't mean this in a supernatural sense, but do you have just a sixth sense
ally
from
of
your
justice at your
experience
service.
where you
Are
just
you the
kind of
one who
know,
needed a
you know
hero?
what? I think that person's going through the same
Another
thing.
day,
And I
another
ask because
heroic me.
I mean, I would miss it.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be on my radar. I'm a typical non-observant male anyways on a lot of things. My wife's like, why didn't you pick up on that? I'm like, I'm sorry, I just totally missed it. But having an experience like that, I would think, correct me if I'm wrong, that you would maybe hear something somebody says, something they do, a way they react, and maybe make you think, okay, there's a massive backstory here. Is that the case for you?
So what's weird, and this is another part of the reason that I tell this story, is I think one of the risks of people hearing things like this is we start looking around at people and going, are they on the good team or are they on the bad team? You know, is that person is my demon dar going to go off and am I going to know they're one of the bads and oh, that's a good person over here. And I think one of the things that actually ultimately led me to almost taking my life was the duality of people is like, it's terrifying. There's not like, oh, that's the bad person and they're always bad and they always do really bad things, so stay away from them. That's a person made in the image of God who right now is not operating off of the image that they were made in right now. And maybe there's differing degrees of that. And what I will say is, no, there's not like, oh, I walk by somebody and go, yeah, that's one of those. No, if anything, when I interact with people, there are moments where I'll go,
Tower.
the enemy is acting right now. Like this is coming from a place that is not
Exactly.
just, oh, you're tired and
Easy.
you had a bad day.
Think of it as
This
Jinzhou's
kind of
largest service
Reaction,
station.
this
or
kind
an
of
integration
response
hub.
to things,
It's something along those
this
lines.
can't be explained
I'm not
by
much of a tech
just
person
human
myself.
emotion. And I think that's a sense that I pick up
Long
on.
story short,
and
it's a navigator.
I
a
can
defense
pick up on
system,
that when I'm
and
talking
a
to
regional information
sometimes even
center
other believers
all in
where it's
one
like, I think we need to
enormous
stop and pray
package.
right now because I think what's
The
happening
smaller
right now
ones we ran
is
into earlier are resonance beacons.
outside of us.
Well, so
Data is
growing
shared
up,
between
you described,
all
and this is true
beacons.
for all of us,
You
whatever
activate
background
one,
is, we just
and the
kind of
entire
assume that
map's
our
data will be
experience is
relayed to your
normal,
terminal.
whatever that
Pretty nifty,
experience
huh?
may be. When was the first time you kind of
Just
thought,
place your
you know
terminal
what,
here.
there's something else going on here. Maybe my experience is different. Johnny down the street is not experiencing the same thing that I am. And maybe that is, once you had clarity looking back, some of those pieces started fitting together. But what were some of those moments where you really began to realize, okay, this isn't the normal kid's childhood? And maybe it was the kidnap thing, I mean, I have no idea. But what were some of those moments, if you remember them?
I think the one that actually, my conversion story, I think is actually what made me go, hey, this is not normal. What you're experiencing is not just like a childhood difference of maybe parents with different personalities or parents going through a bad divorce. Because
you can
well,
come
we
visit
weren't
the
really
magistrate
involved in
at any
church.
time.
You know, it was kind of more of a social
Lucia,
thing before
Do you mind bringing Rover
my dad
over
got
to the city
remarried.
hall?
You know, I went with friends on a mission trip. And I just thought it was a cool opportunity to go hang out with friends and whatever. And we came back. And as we were coming back, we stopped at a Baptist church. And random church, walk in, a bunch of kids on a mission trip, and the pastor happens to be preaching the gospel that day. And he locked eyes with me the second he started preaching. And for 40 minutes, I felt like I was on fire. And not in like a bad, like, I gotta get out of here, this is horrible. It was the polar opposite of what I had experienced when mom went away and someone else was there and I needed to hide. It was this fire of pure, I don't know, love, joy, peace. I mean, I think of the fruit of the Spirit, like all those things just bundled in one that just hit me, that I went, wait a minute. Whatever this is that I still don't fully understand, I know what the opposite of this is. And the opposite of this isn't just parents who are in an argument or mom's having a bad day and you need to stay out of the room type of a thing. I went, there's something bigger going on here. And at the time, I still didn't have context for it. But that was when I knew something about these experiences, these moments where someone shows up and says, you need to come with me, and I say, what's the password?
First
And they
time
freak
seeing
and
such
I
a
run
crowd
screaming.
in front of the city hall.
And whatever I experienced in that moment, I went, oh, this was the opposite of that. And I don't think people can relate to whatever this is I described. Because when I talk to my friends about the things they experience, they don't talk about it on this plane.
turned down. Most people were
Okay, so I'm going to
advised
come back to that experience and unpack it a little bit more. But one other question before we get there is, Christopher, maybe a year or two ago, I interviewed a 4th or 5th generation witch. And she became a Christian
this is the
and kind of
true
stopped the
confidence of our
generational
rover.
curse, so to speak, from one generation
agree,
to the
though.
next.
So
And she
far,
talked
you've
about,
been
and others in
ticking
this
all
world
the
have told me,
boxes in our
who come out of it,
magistrate's
that there's a certain power that even though they knew it was evil, there was a draw to that power. Were you ever drawn to that, or is there always a sense of, I want nothing to do with this?
So I'd be completely lying if there wasn't the allure of, ooh, this is interesting. And also, it's why I caution people when it comes to like learning more about or
Sure
digging
it
into
can.
some of the
thought of something,
practices.
Rover?
Because even when I got older, and it was probably when I was in college and really started digging into like the past and some of the story and all of this and understanding what it was, yeah, there was a part of me that was like, ooh, it's kind of like interesting and exciting and scary and extremely powerful. Like I said, I saw my mom do things where I was like, man,
You mean...
there's insane power in this. But I think that experience I had with my conversion made me go,
I can't
yeah,
really
but it
keep up
pales
with
in
your thoughts.
comparison to whatever that
I think a
was.
meeting with a magistrate
And
wouldn't hurt.
God's power was,
Same here. Anywhere,
it
magistrate's
just
the best
cast
lead
out.
we have for now.
I
no
still
matter what she
remember,
has in
it just
store
like
for Rover.
sent darkness flying. And I went, nah, it doesn't compare. And when you'd seen the
I'm just
horrors
wondering
and
how
the
to
evil
take
that went
you,
along
Yang
with it,
Yang,
you're
and
like,
Baiju
whatever
to some
power
chow
you
after
think
this.
you're getting, I saw my mom
But
be
my
a
shift's almost
slave
coming up.
to it. Just a
Don't
complete
overmake-
I don't have
slave
anything
to what it was, and she
particular in mind.
hated it. She loved it, but she hated it. And so
It was me who...
I think for me, there was never
I
this
mean,
like,
we
should
took
I go
you to
down
Jinzhou.
that path?
I think
So
we
much
should
as,
keep
you
you
know,
company.
ooh, isn't it
At
kind of like
least while
fun
you're
and
still
interesting
here.
type of
Oh,
a thing?
I
It was like,
see.
no, that was maybe as far as I ever went.
What do you think, Rover?
How old were you when you
Are
went
you in
into
a
that
hurry to
Baptist
recover
church?
your memories?
Probably 13.
Oh my goodness,
In
younger
that
than I thought. And it
case-
was more just curiosity. I'm sure you'd say the Holy Spirit was guiding you in
How
there, but
about
you're just like,
meeting with the
let's go into a
magistrate
Baptist
first?
church.
So,
She may have the
we
answers
were
you're
back from the
looking
mission
for.
trip. The whole bus stopped, and it
I'm
was like,
not allowed
hey,
to
it's
go
Sunday.
with
Like,
you.
let's go to church.
Shizia and
Sure,
I
this
will
is
be
the only
right
one that's on the
outside
side of the
City Hall.
road. Bus stopped,
I'll be
went
waiting
in,
for you.
type of a thing. And yeah, I would absolutely
That's
say
right.
it was
We're not going
the Holy
anywhere.
Spirit showing up,
Just give us
because
a shout if anything goes down.
there have been a handful of experiences where I've experienced it again, and one was immediately before I almost took my life. So I know what it is when you experience the light side. Is, I mean, for any Star Wars fans, like when you experience the light, you're like, oh wow, I know what that is, and that is infinitely more powerful than anything on the dark side.
Was that your conversion at 13? Is that when you became a believer, or just one step in your journey? Like, how did you change? You described the experience of light and powerful, but how did that change you, if at all, moving forward?
So the thing I think that's been interesting about following Christ, being under the banner of Yahweh, is while I had that moment, and I think if you were to say, when did you know you wanted to pursue God, not darkness? It was then. did I say the sinner's prayer?
Please,
Did I,
follow
like,
me.
whatever, a lot of times I think we associate in American culture this like one-time experience, and then poof, the fairy dust has been sprinkled on you and you go on with life and you're a good Christian forever. That's never been my experience. Was that the moment where I went, whoa,
Kindly
whatever
have a
this
seat.
is, I want to be on this team. Like, God, I don't
Lady
know what
Sanhua will be with you
it all
shortly.
means. I don't know fully who you are or what it means to follow you, but I want you and all of you. But I didn't have words for it. So I would say that's when I knew that I was committed to that team no matter what else. But I don't know that I would say like, oh, and then I started going around spreading the gospel to my friends and other things, because I walked out of the church and the pastor who was with us tried to talk me out of my conversion. He tried to say that wasn't real. So, it was a very bizarre experience.
Okay, so let me lean into this a little bit. The same pastor you heard preach, or a different pastor? Was
No.
it that night or a different time?
No, the
Tell me
pastor
about
who was
that.
leading the ministry trip.
Okay, so this is the ministry trip you were on, and then you happened to go to this church, and then it was like that night or very shortly after you talked with them?
No, we walked out of the church.
Oh,
we walked
okay.
out of the church,
Pleased
got
to
on the
make your
bus,
acquaintance.
and
I
I happened
apologize
to be
for the
sitting
delay.
with the pastor
My
who
name
had
is
led the
Sanhua,
trip,
the bodyguard of
and
Madam
told him what
Magistrate.
had just happened to me, and he started telling me why
I
it
regret
wasn't
to inform
real,
you that
it
Madam
was just an
Magistrate is
emotional
currently
experience,
away.
that wasn't God.
Prior to
That's
her
just
departure,
something that
she instructed me to bring
charismatics
you
do
these
to manipulate
tokens
people. But
and
the
a welcome
interesting thing,
gift.
going back to what we talked about earlier of when my spidey senses went off,
Madam Magistrate advised you to
I went,
explore what these tokens represent during her absence.
this is
This may
not
help
what
you
I
acquire the
experienced in there.
information you
This is the
desire
other
sooner.
team. I've experienced this
I
before, and what is
apologize
happening
for the
right now,
inconvenience.
this
but
isn't just
please
me
rest
talking
assured,
to my
she
pastor.
will be here to meet you
This
in
is
3 days' time.
There's a whole lot of darkness going on right now, and so I was too young to speak the
When
power
it
of
comes to
Jesus
these
in his
tokens,
face.
it is
But
never
I just
her
remember kind of
intention
going
to confuse you with the puzzles.
but going, I
Instead,
don't
they should
believe
serve
what
as
you're saying
clues
right
that
now, and
lead
I
you
know that
toward
this
the
is coming
truth.
from
Madam
the other
Magistrate
team. They want to
deeply
stop
regrets
whatever
not having the
that
time
was.
to deliver her messages
I mean, how
to
do you
in
look
person.
back on that? Because I'm somewhat torn, and I
We
say,
value
here's
your
a pastor.
presence far more
His
than you
job
might
is to
imagine.
shepherd you
The
and
same goes
affirm what
for
is
any
true.
and
And
all
I
information about
appreciate
you.
the concern over emotionalism. Like, that is a caution. But
Because
he's
she will
speaking
require
the
at least
opposite
3 days to
of
complete
the
her current
truth
task.
you just
Madam Magistrate
experienced.
wanted to assure you
Have
that
you
in 3
talked to them
days,
since? Do
by
you look
any
back
means,
and just say,
she
here's a
will
guy who's
return to
doing his
meet you in
best but
person.
was misguided? Or how do you even make sense of that so quickly
Yeah.
after a life-changing experience?
So I've never
You-
talked to him about it since. It
I'll be
wasn't
sure to
something that
convey
really
your
came up. We
kindness to
weren't
Madam
in the church
Magistrate.
once my dad got
Please
remarried,
accept my
so
sincerest
we
gratitude.
didn't really stay connected. But I think one of the best
Yes,
analogies I
Madam
can
Magistrate
compare it
does
to,
hope
because
to have
again,
your
do I think
assistance.
like, oh, he's a.
But there is no
if
rush
I
for
said his
decision.
name, we should ban his
She does
church
not want to
and
pressure
what, like,
you into
no,
anything
no,
you may
that's
not
not what I would
desire.
say. I think
We
the best
invite you to
analogy I
learn
can
about
think
our
of
situation
is anybody
before
who's seen the
making a
Matrix,
final commitment.
and they know when Agent Smith just like zaps into somebody and does something, whether they're actually physically, and this is where people get all hung up on like, can you be possessed if you're. I'm not going to get into the apologetics of that, but all I can say is, do I think that well-meaning
I
people
cannot
who are going
disclose
about
her
their lives
whereabouts at
trying to
this
do the
time.
right thing can be
Please
heavily
trust me that she is
influenced by
eagerly
Agent
looking
Smith
forward to meeting
in
you in
moments when
person.
God's trying to do something? Yeah. And do I think that they may not even realize that's what's happening? Yeah. And that's where I think to him, he probably just thought, I'm trying to, talk you out of what seemed to me was a charismatic, whatever experience, and where that influence came to sit next to me after church when he didn't know what had happened and suddenly just start talking me out of the experience. Like, to me, I was like, this is bigger than just a pastor who, randomly did that, whether he's aware of it or not.
I do appreciate that thoughtful, gracious response, because I've worked with students over 2 decades, speaking, teaching, counseling, different capacities as a parent, and I'm sure there's times like that I completely missed the boat and gave the wrong advice. So being able to just step back from that and have grace towards people, but also say there's real spiritual forces at work and not losing that to protect ourselves. I think we can have both of those. Now, you mentioned
When I think
earlier-
on that, the other thing I would add to it is, I think this is also why we sometimes have to move away from this Hollywood-esque, only sinister view of how the enemy plays, because it's easy to think, oh, I'm only hearing from, the enemy trying to influence me when it's pure wickedness, like when I want to, do something horrible or whatever. And it's like, there are times he's just a deceiver. He just wants to rob, kill, and steal. Like, that's all he cares about. He doesn't have to show up in this evil, sinister form. And that's why I think the Bible talks so much about why you need to
Pardon
meditate
my
on my
inability to
word
provide
day
a better
and night
answer.
and be in
Madam
it with
Magistrate
me at all
has a
times,
task that
because
she must handle
you may be
alone.
doing something that
But she has
seems
never
totally
for one
innocent, but
moment
you suddenly
forgotten
just
about
get
her
this
meeting
push
with
to
you.
go, you should do this.
Not knowing
And it's
exactly
not
when you'd arrive,
sinister, but you just
she
go,
had to leave without having the chance
okay.
to welcome
And you do
in
it without
person.
first taking that to God and going, wait a minute, is this something that
Since
God
Madam
would
Magistrate
actually
is currently away, I
advocate
cannot
for?
make
Is
the
this
final
something
confirmation
God would
on her
actually
behalf.
stand behind the
But
actions
you-
I'm about to take?
You are
Because it may
truly
not
exceptional.
be, oh, go kidnap this kid or go talk this person out of
Regarding
their
that.
conversion experience. It might be, hey, I need you to just go do this.
My
and you just
eyes
kind
can
of,
see the
okay, fine.
frequencies
And you
of
just
all
mindlessly go
living
through it.
beings.
And I think that's where we
Or
sometimes miss
rather,
the mark.
those frequencies are the only thing I
So
can
Satan
see.
is a liar, a deceiver, and the best
You
lies
share the
are
same
subtle
frequency
lies
with
that
Madam
just,
Magistrate.
Yep.
in a small way, twist the truth. It's the most persuasive. We see that in the garden at the very beginning.
Apologies.
God really
My
saves the
description was
subtle
not
question
accurate.
to throw him off
Both
balance.
you and
But Satan's
Madam
also
Magistrate
a
look undistorted
murderer
to me.
and wants to kill. And consistently, when I've been able to talk with people who came out of the occult,
my
their
eyes,
family
you
was,
appear
there's
the way
often a
you are.
moment where it's like, I just want to take my own life or end somebody else's life.
Yeah.
You describe being at that point.
They
What happened and what
all
what
look
took you out of
different.
taking your life?
So I had my, what I would say, conversion experience. I experienced God in his full glory. And then I mentioned my dad got remarried to
May I have your
what I would
terminal for a
describe
moment?
as an American evangelical, right? All that comes with that culture. We started speaking Christianese. We did the American
Yes,
Christian
it's
thing.
the gourd on your waist. The device
But what
every
was always
resonator
hard about it
carries.
was,
Madam Magistrate
going back to
thought
what I
you
said
might
about
need
my
it.
childhood, 90% of it was totally normal. And so here I am in this
The
new
utility module on your terminal
evangelical
has been
Jesus
upgraded to the
world.
latest iteration. You are now
And it's
granted
honestly not
unlimited
really any
access
different.
to all regions in Jin. You are free to visit
We go to
any
church
part
on
of Jinzhou.
Sunday. We say the thing when we're around people. We speak in Christianese.
Yes, including the city hall.
But our lives
You
aren't
have full
necessarily
access to its facilities.
notably different. Like, wow,
Also, may I ask,
they're living completely
have you decided your
differently.
place of residence in
And
Jinzhou?
that was hard for me because I went,
If not,
okay,
Madam
this
Magistrate
thing I
has arranged
experienced
accommodation
in this
for
Baptist
you in
church
advance
was like
here in the city hall.
real and on fire and life transforming. Now I'm in Christian culture, and it doesn't really seem like anybody in this culture is really all that transformed
Understood.
by it. Seems
We
like
will
they've
be
all
ready to
said, okay,
accommodate you
yeah, Jesus
anytime.
died and raised from the dead for my sins. Got it. Like, I passed the test. But then they just go back to living their life like everybody else. And I lived with that for the rest of my time home. I went off to Bible college, and that was a very similar experience where I went, okay, I'm around a lot of people who speak Christianese and, vote a certain way and say, like, they do the things that Christians do, but I'm not necessarily seeing this life transformative force that I experienced. And that was really hard for me. And granted, God brought people into my life at just the right time to give me a glimmer of hope where I was like, but that person, like, I see it, I sense it, I just feel that God is driving their life. They are fully in tune with it. So there was enough there to kind of keep me moving forward and not lose hope and not
Rover!
lose faith.
It
But
took
I
you
had a
so
crisis
long.
of faith
What gives?
towards the end of my college
Was our
career where I
magistrate
just
a
went,
chatterbox?
like, what is this? Like, God, what is this? Like, I experienced you. I don't
So
see
Madam
you anywhere. I'm
Magistrate's
not
not in the
feeling
city
you
hall.
anywhere. I don't see you transforming lives. I see the brokenness. This is when all of my stuff just started coming out, and I started
sure
really
is.
realizing the horrors I'd been through and the
Just, yeah.
trauma that had had on me, and didn't know how to process it, and then
The
didn't know how to
increasing
process it around a
taciturals,
bunch of
uncannily
veneered-faced people
powerful
who said
tacit
everything was always
discords.
great, and I
And
love
now,
life, and Jesus is good,
magistrate's
nothing ever goes
absence.
wrong for me.
Plus,
And so I had nowhere to
mysterious
turn to go.
Rover.
That's not my experience.
I'm
It
afraid.
sucks. I experienced horrific trauma, and people are broken, and everywhere I look, I see fallen people.
Aren't
But
you the
we all seem to
practical
be
type?
completely blind to it. And one night, I just said, "I'm
I'd
done.
love me
I can't do this,
some
God." And I
chili
remember
sauce
again
tofu,
that
ginkgo
presence,
mao
the
chai,
dark presence, showed
spicy
up
meat slices.
and just was like,
Ugh,
"See,
I'm starving.
see, the pastor was
Wait
right.
a sec.
Do you have any
It's a
plans,
fraud.
Rover?
It's not real. It's all just another version of the same thing that you saw as a
However,
kid. There's
do you
just
mind if we
varying
have a look at the
degrees of
tokens?
how much people are faking it to go through life." And I started to believe it. And I went, you know what? Maybe you're right. And if that's the
So,
case,
what's
then I
so
guess my
special
only
about
hope is
them?
just to be done. And I still remember the voices saying, "Yep, you're right. You're worthless. There's no point. It's never going to get any better. It's all a fraud.
It seems
Here you spent
like-
the last few years. You
And
thought
it
you
is
had
a
this experience and you were going to
device
experience
that
something
tells
different, and
time
it's
by
not
using
real."
sunlight's direction.
And I walked all the way over
Sundials
to a
in
bridge.
Hong
I
Kong
pulled myself
usually have
over the
marked
edge. I
lines for the
remember
12 shoe
counting
turns in a day.
the cars underneath and
And
timing
every
it.
shoe
I
turn
was a
is
math
2
geek, so I knew
hours
exactly
long,
how to time
with
it so
some
that I would
showing
hit
seasons or
right
months.
when the car was
The
in front.
design
And
of
I
this
just remember
sundial
being
looks a bit
encouraged
unusual,
along the
though.
way.
On this sundial,
And that
time seems to be represented
white
by the
presence
12
showed up
earthly
again.
branches
And it didn't.
drawn on the
It didn't
outer ring
say,
of its surface.
"No, don't
and
do
its
this."
inner
Like,
ring
no,
shows
no,
the
go.
4 symbols,
It wasn't that.
each representing
It
one
was
cardinal
just
direction.
God's glory.
These are the
in
4
all its
famous
majesty,
suspicious beasts in
And it was
Huanglong's
like
folklore.
a flash,
They
yet
are
it
believed
felt like
to
1,000
protect people
years.
from all 4 directions
And it
under
wasn't
heaven.
saying,
Generally,
"You're
the tail
wrong.
long represents
You're doing
the
it
east.
bad. You're not
The white
following me
tiger
right. You're
stands
not.
for the
you're,
west.
you're screwing it
The
up."
vermilion
It said
bird
all the
stands for the
pain,
south.
all the hurt,
And
everything
finally,
you're experiencing,
we
the
have the
duality
black
of this.
tortoise for
It's
the
real.
north.
You're right.
It seems
right.
the sundial
You
is
live in a
supposed to show
broken world.
both time and direction.
And it breaks my heart how broken this world
How
is.
could it
But
work
this
when
is
there is
not
not a compass
what
attached?
I want
Ugh,
for you.
that
But the choice is yours.
a candy? Oh, I've had these when I was a
And
kid.
that
I think they were
that's the
called
best I can describe what
sugar,
happened.
but I haven't seen anything
And I just
like
went,
this in a while. Went out
okay,
of trend, maybe.
I'm not.
It
I still don't know
reminds
what
me
you
of my
want from me. Like I
childhood.
didn't suddenly like, hey,
I
God
still
revealed my whole
remember
life
the
plan,
taste.
and then I knew where I was
It
going.
was so sweet. I
Nope,
was really
he didn't.
scared
He
of
didn't
getting
tell
my
me
flu shots
where I was
when
all
I
going to
was
go
little.
from there. He didn't tell
And
me I was still going to
sometimes the
experience
nurse lady would
hell
hand
on
out
earth
candies like this
going
as a
forward,
prize
and it
for
was going to
being
be really
good.
hard, and that
But
following him
what
wasn't
does
going to
it
be
mean
this
as a token?
cakewalk, and my life was going to be happy. But he did say, "This isn't what I want for you."
The color of this
But
leaf
the choice
seems
is
a bit
yours.
odd. Can't
I think
And there was so much love and
never
majesty
sorry.
in his presence that I just went,
This
okay, if
is
this isn't what you
magazines
want,
are
I
not
still
made out of
remember in
all
that church saying,
So Jizya
I wanna
and
follow
share
you.
similar childhood
and
memories
if you're
of the
saying
sugar
this
pearl.
isn't the plan, then
you remember
I don't
it
know what
too,
the plan is,
Rover?
but it's not this.
When it
And I
comes
turned
to
around
candies,
and walked
no
home
one knows
and went
them
to the
better than the
hospital,
kids of
and I
Team
got help.
Joe.
Wow. What's one or two people in your journey that responded maybe the opposite of the past you described earlier, that felt like they get it, they're giving me hope, they listen to my story? Or maybe just one person that jumps out from 13 forward, maybe through Bible
I don't
school,
have candy
that
like
just
that.
ministered to you in a way you think
But I got
Christians
this.
should respond
really
or live their
good.
lives.
You,
So
you can have one.
going back to the moment I just described,
No need to thank me.
I had a couple friends that when I walked back from the apartment or from the bridge, they saw my face and they'd known the things that I was going through and they'd believed me. They didn't understand it, but they'd believed me. And when I walked back in, I think they knew what I had just almost done.
There's still some
'Cause I had-
distance to the
'cause it-
Huashu Academy.
I don't know how to
Let's see
explain
who
it.
reaches
It
there
was almost
faster.
weird how I was able to just sneak
I
out of the
just installed
apartment.
some
There were
apps
tons
for
of
you.
people there. Nobody
Please try
noticed. I
looking
just
for one
vanished.
that's
Because when I came back, they were like, where were you? Like, how did you even get out? What happened? It was like in an instant, things just happened. And when I came back, they knew what had just almost gone down. And
Just open the utilities.
they
select
loved
the
on me.
grapple. And there
They
you
didn't
go.
judge
If
me.
you
They
wanna
didn't
be a
say,
hero
how'd you
like
make
the
such a
Jinjo
stupid
speedster,
mistake? Like,
you
why would
gotta
you think?
master the grapple.
No, they just said,
Come on, give it a
they just
shot,
gathered
Rover.
around me and hugged me and said, I'm so sorry. And they said, we're going to get you help. And that, it was like the human version of what I'd experienced on the bridge. So that was huge. I still remember my youth pastor.
Oh,
He
wait
was
a sec.
probably one of
Someone's
the
looking
people
for
that
me.
gave me hope in between. He loved his kids.
What?
He loved Jesus.
When did he
And he was
disappear?
so genuine. And I remember
Don't worry.
I just
It's
wanted
all
to
right.
be
I'll
around
be right
him
there. Duty calls.
whenever
Oops,
I could
almost
because he
forgot.
just
Can't be late.
exuded
Sorry,
delight.
Rover,
And
Yin-Yang.
whenever I read the
I've
Bible
gotta
and
head
I read
off for
these
my
versions
shift.
of you'll be a light
I'll
to the
join
world,
you
you'll
right
be a
after I'm
salt.
done, all right?
Like people
If you
taste
need me,
it.
just
They
shout
see
my
it.
name.
They feel
and
it.
the Jinjo
And I remember my
speedster
youth pastor.
will be there in a second.
He was one of those people where you just went, there's something about this person
Stop!
that
Don't call me that.
is completely different and inspires and
Anyway,
gives me
I
hope
gotta go.
for
You guys
whatever
okay
it
on
is
your own?
and all this
Give me a
brokenness
heads up when there's any
that
updates.
I'll go
Sure.
forward. And there were moments
do your
in
thing.
college where I made some
Don't
really
worry.
stupid
I'm
decisions.
staying with him. Rover,
But I had
let's go inside.
some professors who went, I know who you are. I know what you've been through. And I love you despite your mistakes. I love you. Like, I'm not judging you on it. Yeah, you're accountable. I'm going to hold you accountable. You made a stupid mistake.
She's probably
Federal
busy in her
agents
lab.
showed up at the school.
Over there.
Like,
must
we
be
can't
Mr.
just look the other
Morphy
way.
From the Department of Safety.
But I love you.
Baiju
And we're going to
once
work through
mentioned him
this.
before. He might be able to
and
help
so
us get
I
in
think
touch
those
with
are some of the
Baiju,
people
but,
who,
it
as
seems
best
to
I
have
can
caught
say
him
it,
at a bad time.
Jesus was living through them, and I felt it, and they were those moments that I needed
Previous prototype
in between.
I'm tempted to ask a story
Anyway,
about the federal
let's try
agents, but
asking
we'll
him,
let
shall
that
we?
one go.
Maybe that's for another time.
That's for another
What?
time.
You need
have
something?
9 kids, right? Is that
I
right?
refuse to
8
tolerate
kids.
the
Okay,
foolish
your
striving
8th
of
was
those insatiable
born, I think,
slugs.
shortly after we
Since
had
it's
our
difficult
last
for our
interview
research to
not
deal
long
with a man
ago.
Yeah.
like him,
Do you
I'd
talk
rather
to your
handle
kids
it
about this? You're going to
personally
let them
and
watch this
swiftly.
interview? How
And
do you
you are.
process your backstory with them?
Mr. Morphy,
So as they
please
get
pardon
older,
our
my oldest is
intrusion.
13.
we are
I'm
friends
extremely
of
open
Baiju,
with my
and we're
kids. I
here
mean, we
to
read.
look for her.
I see.
We just I had somebody
I hope I
recently
didn't
ask me,
cause
like,
any
what should I
offense
do
earlier.
with my kids? And I'm like, honestly,
Not
just
at all.
read
It was us
the
who
text
bothered you.
with them. Just read it with them and talk about it.
Baiju
Talk
should
about
be in
what
the
stands
data
out.
analysis room. I'll go tell her
And
you're
so
here.
we talk about,
you,
we've
sir.
read through the Bible together multiple times. And we talk
This
about
is Morphy,
some of the ugliness
a renowned figure
in
in the
there,
Department
and
of
some of the
Safety.
really
He was
terrible
born
things
in
we
the
see
new
the heroes of the
Federation,
faith do.
and he
And
joined
we
the
talk about
Washu
that
Academy
duality
a few
of
years ago.
just really
I heard
righteous
his
people who
talent
do
is truly
really horrific
impressive.
things.
People say he's a bit scary at
And they
first
know that
glance,
daddy has had
but he's actually quite
a challenging
kind-hearted once you get to
childhood.
know
They
him.
know that
She
daddy's
said to
gone
me
through
he's
some
quite
things, and they've
popular
asked,
with the kids.
you know, will you ever tell us the
Children have been
specifics of it? And I
pestering
said I
him
will.
for all kinds
I will
of fancy toys.
when you're old
and
enough
he's
to really
always open to
understand
their
what that is. But there are times when we talk about certain stories and they know when I go, hey, these things are real. This kind of stuff that we're seeing here, when Jesus is casting demons out of people, these aren't people who are just sick. There's other things going
you
on
are.
that we can't see.
The
And
data
so
we collected
it's
in the
about
Gorges of Spirits has
personalizing
been
it
submitted
to where
for
they are
analysis,
from a mature
and
level.
we'll have the results
I
today.
mean, I think back to when I
I have the
discovered some of my
equipment for your
mom's journals.
physical
I was too young
examinations
to
ready too.
understand
Any
what I
discoveries
was
during your
reading
trip to the city
to
hall?
process that, and I don't want to expose them to that. And I will probably always, in some ways, shape it, even as I'm shaping it here. I'm not going to disclose
What do
the
you think,
details of some of the
Baiju?
horrors or go into it, because it's like, why give evil that kind of stage time? No way.
I love that approach. I know
I have
there's
a
some people
hypothesis
probably
about the
thinking, why don't
sugar
you
pearl,
probe into
but I need
how
to
did your
verify
mom
it first.
practice the occult? What did this look
If
like?
possible,
And that's just
I
somebody
recommend
else's
conducting
story to tell.
non-destructive tests of
We
all
don't
these
want to play
tokens
into
you
that.
have.
But I do have a final question for you. You mentioned losing just contact with your mom since you were a teenager,
Data
so
is
it's been a
always
couple decades plus. There's obviously a chance, given that
The
you
first
shared
3
your
tokens
story
can be
public,
tested
that
at my
she would come
branch's
across
laboratory.
this and maybe watch this.
This
if she
miniature
happened
sundial
to,
will require
what would you
radiographic
want to say to
testing,
your
though.
mom?
To access the necessary equipment,
say the same thing
we'll
that
need
my
to
friend
file
said
a
when I
request
came
with
back
one
from
of the
that bridge,
Tacitite
that
studies-related branches.
I love you, and God loves you more than you can even imagine. And I'm sorry for what you went through.
Indeed.
no one should have had to
One moment,
experience
please.
the things that she did. And I'm sorry that was her experience, but that isn't what,
Give me
that's
the
not who
items
God
to be
is.
tested.
That's what
Anything
I would want
else
her
you
to
need
hear.
me to know,
That
you can let me know
I'm sure
now.
she carries baggage from
You
the
may
thing,
retrieve
and
your
I
items
don't
in 20
hate her.
minutes.
I'm not angry
And
with
the
her.
analysis
I've
report
truly
will be
forgiven
ready
her, and I hope she
5
can experience
minutes
the
after
true
that.
forgiveness and love
Take a right,
that
and
I've
you'll find
experienced
me in the testing room.
Christ.
I
One of
don't
my big
see
takeaways of
anything
your story
special
is
with
just
these
believing
items.
people and listening to
Speaking
them,
of the sugar pearl,
responding non-judgmentally.
you all remember eating
and
sugar
just
pearls like
leading
this when you
with
were kids?
love is just the
No,
way to
I'm
minister
from the
to
new
people. And I want to
Federation.
get better at that
You mean the
myself.
sugar pearl might be
So I
unique
appreciate
to
you
Huang
drawing
Long?
that out. Thanks for being
I
willing to
remember
share
a
your
nurse
story. I
lady
know this
giving
is
me a
personal.
candy like
And I want to
that.
ask you to just think about it. You prayed about it for a while. You
sugar
really thought
pearls
about
like
it.
this were distributed at
which
hospitals.
tells me you want to share it
Perhaps.
for the right reasons that you hope just
The
encourages
sugar
people
pearl
and
might
blesses
be a
people. And
type
I
of
think you've done
medicine.
that. Now,
Its
I
sweet taste would have made it more
some people
palatable
might-
to children.
want to
Ms.
know
Baja,
more about just
as a
kind of what
Huang
you
Long
do.
local working at the academy,
I listen to
Yeah.
your weekly
I suppose you
cultural
already
update.
had an idea
Maybe
about
just
what
tell
it is?
folks where they can follow your ministry, which is
I do have
completely
my theory
different
as to
than
what
this.
it is, but it still needs verification.
Yeah, so I
wouldn't
write
second
on
it.
Substack. I do
Let's
a podcast.
find out through actual testing then.
I recently lost my traditional full-time job, and so now we'll be doing a lot more time doing digital leadership coaching. And
take
I
some
like to
time
say
before the
I'm
results
kind
are
of the
ready.
corporate
If you
MacGyver.
have other matters
so
to
I do a
take
lot
care
of
of, you
executive
should go
problem
ahead.
solving with
I'll
technology.
let you
so
know once
people,
we have the
most people
results.
know me from LinkedIn
Shall we
or
wait
YouTube
here
or
at the
Substack.
academy, Rover?
You didn't go to Biola, but you're exactly the kind of graduate we want to make at Biola in the sense of people that are intentional about their faith, really helping people solve problems.
Sure
but
you
you
can.
naturally
But don't
weave
forget
it
your physical
in
examination.
appropriate ways.
I'll see you in a
You
while
don't
for
shy
that.
away from it, but just in respectful, thoughtful ways. And I love that. I listen to your cultural update weekly. I told you this just in terms of business and AI and culture.
I
And
have
we'll
the
put a link
equipment ready.
below. I hope people will
I'll need to check your
that
health
out.
status
And before you
and
go,
see if
make
there are
sure you
any
hit
unusual
subscribe. We want to bring you
fluctuations.
more stories
Now
and
let's
more
begin, if you're ready.
apologetics content to
Do you
equip
have any
you.
questions
Christopher,
before we
you're a
begin?
good friend. Thanks for coming on and sharing your story.
Apart from the ancient
Thanks for having
legend
me, Sean.
Yang Yang
Always a
mentioned
pleasure.
earlier, I've never heard of anything like this.
I had a friend who introduced me to a producer who was a Grammy award-winning producer, and he's worked with big names. And so that's when I started collabing with Busta Rhymes, Sean Paul, Erica Murillo, Gucci Mane to get that song to take over the world. And we took a break from a session one time, and we're walking around the studio, and he said to me, "Do you know that if you sold your soul to the devil, you can have instant fame tomorrow?"
Hello and welcome back to the Almost False podcast, where I interview regular people with incredible stories. Today's guest is an artist who used to be signed to a
But if
major
we look
label,
at it another
working
way,
with names that most of us would
we
be
might
familiar
finally
with.
be
She talked
able
about
to
her life within the
verify said
industry
legend.
and how that environment
Once we
pulled her
figure out
away from
what
the Christian
really
values she had
happened
grown
with
up
your
around.
body.
There's a lot of talk about Hollywood from people who have never been there, but
Now
this is
let's
a woman
begin,
who was at the
if you're
very
ready.
top of the music
Can you
industry,
try to
and she revealed the
manifest the
true driving
crownless's
force behind
frequency
it.
without
Her
using
stage
your
name
terminal?
was Cece Segarra, but her real name is Christina Cheney. And this is her story.
My friend who I went to church with, she was
I
a
am
part of
not
my
seeing
youth
the
group, and
Crownless's
she's like,
data in
"Hey,
your
the
terminal."
Florida Marlins are having an
So
audition
it was
for dancers."
indeed absorbed into your body.
And I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go. Mom, can I go?" And she's like, "Yeah." I was 17. And
the crownless's
I
frequency
auditioned,
energy was
and I made the team.
consumed by your
I turned
body.
18 right before
leaving
preseason,
no
so I
trace
was
behind.
legally allowed to join. And that opened up my world, my eyes to a
But
whole
how did you
new
manage
world.
to
And
do
this is
that?
in South Florida, so
It's as though there's
clubbing
another
is very
mechanism within
popular.
your body capable
just
of absorbing
partying,
frequency energy.
the parties are endless in Miami. There's a party all the time, and they don't stop because there's no like cutoff. It's like you party until you don't.
Your test
And
results
so
don't indicate
that
things
was part of the
wrong.
lifestyle. You
So
go, you
your
dance at the
amnesia may
games, and
not
then
be
all
linked
the
to
girls are
traumatic
going out at night,
events.
and so we go everywhere for free.
As for your
So I'm
ability to
meeting
absorb
people in the
echoes,
industry because they're
I
in Miami
can't make a
partying.
connection between that
And I remember
your
a friend
amnesia
that I
based on the current
was
data.
dancing. She was on
To
the
put it
team with
simply,
me, and she had a
it
boyfriend who had a
seems there is
studio.
another dimension.
And I
of
sang. I just always liked to
a
sing.
creature
I
hiding
was very
inside your
confident that
body.
hey, I like to sing. And she was
It
like, "Hey,
seems
you
we
sing,
need a
right?"
simulated
My
combat
boyfriend
to
has a
figure
studio.
out
He's
what
looking for
happened in
someone
your
to
body.
write a hook for
Please
a
hold
song
your
that he's doing.
terminal
I'm like,
tight
"Oh yeah,
and
let's
stay
go."
still.
I've never done this before. So that was my first time having a studio session experience, in a basement studio, but I wrote a song and I was like, whoa, this is what, Leah and Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston have done. Like, I can actually do this.
Discords like you normally
and
would.
So I fell in love with the art of making music, writing songs and lyrics and singing and constructing a song. And then it was almost like I just had meeting people in the industry. In the beginning it was like, lower, almost like lower third. The bottom feeders, people just trying to struggle to make it. And then eventually meeting like some heavy hitters. And this was all through relationships. Like, I had boyfriends that knew people. Because again, in Miami, it's where all of the big players go. And if you're a pretty girl, it's not hard to get turned down. That kind of sounds mean, but it's very true. I just happened to be in this environment, and I'm like, there's doors opening. And I didn't tell my mom or dad all of this stuff. I was just like, hey, I'm going on an audition, or hey, I'm going to a rehearsal, but here I'm going to these studio sessions and writing songs and working with people that I kind of felt were a little like only wanted to work with me because I was pretty and young. But there was this protection around me the whole time. And I attribute that to my parents' prayers, but we can talk about that later on. But I was, and these were always at night. All of the sessions took place at night. And I found it very interesting. I'm like, why can't we record during the day? But that was how I got my foot into the music industry space. Dancing was just an add-on because I dance, but now I can dance and sing.
That's an interesting transition because, you auditioned to be a dancer, a cheerleader for the Marlins, and now all of a sudden you become an artist, a singer. How did your music career look like in the first year? Because for many people, it's a struggle for many, many years to try to get there. You already had a talent of singing, but also you had the connections right away. So how was it in the first year to give people an idea of how you started?
The test is ending.
Oh, it was a struggle because you have a lot of people who put on the mask and say they have these things and they don't. They just want to get you in their space and then hit you with you want to be my girl. Like, no. So there was a lot of that, a lot of actually putting work and my heart into writing a song, recording it, and it not going anywhere. Because they just wanted me to be there or show off to someone else they wanted to impress that they have this young girl who wants to be an artist. So it was a lot of like putting myself out there and getting nothing in return. So a lot of heartbreaks, a lot of disappointment.
What is happening?
And then there's this thing going around. I remember this one guy I was working with who his claim to fame was being Beyonce's cousin. And he would make it seem like, he kind of copied how Diddy would do like on the TV shows. Like, you gotta, stay up all night and you gotta go to Brooklyn and get a cake and bring it back to, like, just extreme things to prove how bad you want to be an artist, because he was gonna fund my project. And creating an EPK, which is an electronic press kit, it's what you do to shop to major labels. You can come up with some songs, but it costs money. So it's very expensive. So my parents couldn't afford it. They knew at some point, like, I wanted to do it. And so certain producers, I let them know that I was working with. Others I didn't, because in the back of my mind, I knew they were shady. And for the most part, 95% of them were shady. But again, I'm like, well, maybe this one can be
what you saw?
The door to the next thing. Because again, that's what they teach you. You got to go through the mud to get, to get the gold. And it's not necessarily true. Not that kind of mud. You know what I mean? So it wasn't easy.
Can you give us some
and
more
eventually,
details?
I had a friend who introduced me to a producer who was a Grammy award-winning producer, and he's worked with big names, and he was kind of on the back burner for a while, so he was kind of jump-starting his career again, and then he met me. He was like, well, let's play this song.
It doesn't sound
and he
like
played
the
a song. He's like, let me see what you got. So I wrote a song in 20 minutes, and that kind of proved that I had talent to do it. So he was like, I'll invest in your project. You just got to get somebody to help invest. And that's kind of how
everything that
I
once happened in a
got
specific
signed with an indie label, because they were looking to get into the industry as well, and it was like the timing at that
after the structure of
right.
sonorospheres.
And so I had this indie label and this producer working
to extract pure
to fund my project to get me ultimately shopped to a major label. Now, all this time while I'm recording and building, becoming a stronger artist, getting exercise and recording, I'm having songs on the radio. They have me doing local shows in Miami. They're getting me collabed with other local upcoming Miami artists.
You may have encountered one such manifestation. I suspect it could have something to do with your unconscious mind. Such anomalies could have been hiding in the simulation, and they resonated with your subconscious. Or perhaps... I'm afraid I can't give you a conclusion yet. Not until we've run a thorough analysis on the data collected. I'll also check the simulated sonorosphere again to see what on earth happened to it. In terms of bodily functions, you seem to be in perfect health. In fact, all the data look quite good. But if you feel anything unusual, please come find me anytime. I am Baizhi, a researcher at the Huashu Academy. Let me witness where this encounter will take us.
I will be there for everyone as we head toward our shared future, leaving the past behind. I will be there for everyone as we head toward our shared future, leaving the past behind. This is a testament to my connection with the world around me. We still have a long journey ahead of us. Let's press on. Will there be new discoveries? I will be there for the show. Be great. I know shadow follows. Checkmate. Nowhere in chat. Moment of resonance. I must. It's a once leave win. And remnants of the. This is a testament to my connection with the world around.
May this journey bring us closer to the truth.
I will be there for everyone.
Let's reach farther destinations together.
Why hesitate if you know what you want?
Another day, another heroic me!
Here's your sundial, intact as it was.
Mr. Mortefi, can we have the test results?
Simply put, it's hollow. Here, try tapping on it. It sounds different from a solid object. It's not just a timekeeping tool. It's an intricate mortise and tenon puzzle box. This sundial is hollow with an inner compartment. We scanned it, and there is a small paper scroll inside. However, it's missing a crucial component. We should be able to spin the wheels on the sundial once the right component is installed. Automata mechanics isn't my field of study. I specialize in developing tacitite weapons, but the foundational theories behind these applied technologies are quite similar. It wouldn't have taken me this long if we were dealing with tacitite weapons. Install the missing part, then rotate the wheels to their correct positions, and you should be able to solve the puzzle and access the paper scroll. However, I still have no idea what the missing component should look like. No need to ask him. I can help you with this. I just need some time to... one moment. I have an incoming call. What is it? You certainly are well informed. It's indeed beautiful data. Good taste. Well, since you've put it that way...
Rover, Mr. Mortefi's expression seems to have softened, don't you think? An amiable person, isn't he? We haven't even asked him to help us with assembling. It looks like Mr. Mortefi needs more time. Maybe we should give him some space to concentrate. Rover, let's come back later, shall we?
Yes, of course. I've already noticed all that you mentioned. Indeed, you just pointed out a blind spot in my thinking. Your workshop? Stop sweet-talking me. I get it. Sorry for keeping you waiting. Let's get back to the sundial. It's a mortise and tenon-based puzzle box. The missing component in the middle needs to fulfill two entirely different structural requirements at the same time. Considering its entire structure, this component needs an automatic buckle that goes down on top of an embedded pointer. I'll draw up a design for you. The parts you'll need can be found in Jiang Li's workshop. I've already informed him about it. You'll only need to go fetch the parts in his place. He keeps a box full of them.
Mr. Mortefi? Is that the person you were talking to earlier? Mr. Xiang Liao, I think?
Yes. It doesn't take me much effort to figure out this little sundial here. But I do admit talking with Jiang Li made it easier. He's the expert in automata mechanics I mentioned earlier. The only principal investigator we currently have.
I mentally prepared myself for the worst, but this place looks Much better than Mr. Mortifee's description, though it is a bit hard to figure out where we should start. Rover? Please. This should be it. It's quite a box full. Let's go back and show it to Mr. Mortifee. Mr. Mortifee, we found the parts.
Good. Bring it to me.
The test results are in. The mangosteen is just an ordinary fruit. It's suitable for regular consumption. We found nothing unusual about it. From the purple leaf you presented, I detected subtle fluctuations in tacit discord's frequency from two distinct sources, but they were overlapping and difficult to distinguish. This is a rare occurrence. The scattered nature of these fluctuations rules out the possibility of them being left behind through contact. This is not an ordinary leaf, but it doesn't seem to be a tacit discord either. Based on the data we gathered, I believe it was sampled from an area struck with the wave-worn phenomena.
Yes, the anomalies that occurred after the lament, including the formation of tacit fields, etheric sea, retroact rain, and gravity loss. These are collectively called the wave-worn phenomena. And the lament was the start of it all.
As for the sugar pearl, it has been determined to be a type of oral vaccine. This sugar pearl expired over 20 years ago. The low-temperature storage life for this vaccine is about 2 years.
A 20-year-old vaccine. Could it be related to the children's epidemic in Zhengzhou 2 decades ago?
The archives in the Academy should have information on the sugar pearl. The archives here are organized in a unique way. You can start by searching the keywords at the lobby terminal.
Mr. Mortifee?
The missing pointer has been installed, and now the sundial should be complete.
So, the discs are rotatable now?
Yes. Align the correct markers with the pointer we just installed, and then you should be able to open it.
The earthly branches and 4 symbols. These symbols are related to the sexagenary cycle. It's an intricate way of recording time in Huanglong. Nowadays, it is mainly reserved for calendars, numerology, and indexing, but it's falling out of daily use now. What kind of information could it represent?
It's the filing system. Most of Huanglong's libraries and databases still use this method to organize their archives, namely the Grand Libraries. The Academy's public archives are organized in this manner too.
I found it. It's located on the way shelf. Mao Cheng Si, Wu Wei. There are 2 photos here. If I remember correctly, Zhenzhou was established during a year of Wei. Several the Gorges of Spirits battles spark and the Rover, about the sugar pearl. Life has never been easy after the lament. But I still remember that sweetness from my childhood. The battle against that epidemic in Zhenzhou was grueling. Once infected, children either died or suffered lifelong disabilities, resonators or not. With tacit discords ravaging Zhenzhou and severing all communication with other cities, desperation ran high. Words are not enough to convey how desperate people must have felt. They resorted to self-experimentation with a newly developed vaccine, risking everything for a chance. If they failed, we owe our presence here to those who came before us. It's important to remember their sacrifices. If the sugar pearl points to the information and reports we have just read, what is Madam Magistrate trying to convey? Is it related to your past? Or is it... But you are not from Zhenzhou. Maybe the place you came from had a similar situation. With this thought, perhaps, the reports about the sugar pearl are just one part of the clues. The other part about your past and memories is hidden in the documents on the way shelf. What do you think, Rover, about the sugar pearl? Zhenzhou was the most recent. The Battle of Gorges of Spirit, the crownless with the limited information available. When it comes to according to the reports, our Rover, about the sugar. What do you think, Rover? I've only seen our magistrate once at the appointment ceremony, so I can't comment on her but her policies have proven effective and greatly benefited us since she took office. Some believe that the remarkably far-sighted and profound decisions were actually devised by Councillor Chang Li due to the young age of the magistrate. You seem to hold Madam Magistrate in high regard.
Let's look back on what we've gathered so far. Our clues point to the sugar pearl as a key in solving the sundial's puzzle. Simply put, one token can lead to multiple targets, and one target may hold several pieces of information. We both had a reason for meeting. The magistrate had information to share, while I had questions to ask. However, her tokens contain both what she wants to tell me and what I want to ask her, making it seem like she is complicating matters. Or maybe she was running out of time. That's why she could only offer us scraps of the puzzle, instead of actually putting it together. Or perhaps she's indeed a master strategist, leaving breadcrumbs for us to follow. The initial clues may simply be a test to... She needed to ensure that those who may come across these tokens without understanding their true meaning would not be able to use them for access. If it were you, Yang Yang, what would you do to make sure the recipient gets what you mean?
I would emphasize my true message by repeating it again and again.
お仕事を終えた私が来た。どう？漂白者の体の具合は。 薬師によると健康そのもので異常はないんですって。印についても少しずつ分かってきたところです。
至って普通の一日だったね。強いて言えばチンピおじが張さんちの猫とぶつかって転んじゃったとか、ワンちゃんが通行人に吠えるって苦情があったからちょっと行ってみたとか、あと失踪届が1件あったかな。ちょっと調べてみたけどどうもあんたとは関係ないみたい。明日直接、そうそう、あんたのデバイスも検索したけどやっぱり引っかからなかったね。履歴にあったのは今日一緒に登録した1件だけで、そんなこんなで退勤時間になったってわけ。あれ、印はもういいの？まあでも美味しいもん食べに行くって約束したしな。明日私の出勤前にみんなでパンファ食堂に行こっか。
漂白者さん、今夜泊まる場所はありますか？
完全に大物扱いされてるじゃん。もうこのままダラダラしてたら朝になっちゃうよ。今日は漂白者を部屋まで案内して、あとは明日の私たちに任せよう。
みんなと一緒にいたい。これからも。
一気に行くぞ。